Hello my friends, it is your resident ghoul gal Hannah back again with another episode of Spooky Snack, a series on my channel where I talk about spooky stories while I turn myself into a snack. For today's video, we're going to be talking about the Villisca Axe murder house. Now this honestly is a pretty traumatic story. The murders that took place here are just honestly horrific. It's also one of the most interesting unsolved cases that I've ever come across. So without further ado, let's hop right into the Villisca Axe murder house. On June 9th, 1912, Josiah Moore and his wife Sarah took their children, Herman, age 11, Catherine, age 10, Boyd, age 7, and Paul, age 5, to a Children's Day service at their local Presbyterian church. Now, the Children's Day service was an end-of-year Sunday school program that Sarah was the director and her children would perform. Two neighborhood children, Lena, age 12, and Ina Stillinger, age 8, accompanied them to this event because the kids were going to be having a sleepover that night. Now, after the service was over, the family spent a little extra time talking to some of their friends there at the event and then proceeded to walk 3 blocks back home. Once they had gotten home, everybody decided to stop and just have a quick snack, a little snack to eat before bed, and then after they finished, everyone went upstairs to go to sleep for the night. Now, tragically, sometime after midnight, a vicious murderer would take Josiah's axe from the backyard and enter the house, murdering everybody in the home, bludgeoning all 8 people to death with the axe. Now, by 7:30 that next morning on June 10th, an elderly neighbor named Mary Peckham noticed that no one from the house was attending to their morning chores like they usually did every day. So she ended up contacting Josiah's brother Ross and letting him know that she hadn't heard from the family. Ross would come over and end up at the house around 8 o'clock that morning. Upon inspecting the downstairs, Ross tragically came across 2 bodies downstairs, and it didn't take long before they obviously called police and the remaining bodies were found upstairs. The murders had set off 10 years worth of investigations, grand jury hearings, trials, and other litigation. Legislation was also written in response to the murder, including the establishment of the current State Bureau of Criminal Investigation's predecessor. But still, to this day, the case remains unsolved. Now, beyond just the obviously horrific crime committed in this case, part of the reason that this case is so odd is because of some of the strange touches that the murderer left at the crime scene. The first odd detail being the 4-pound slab of bacon left leaning against the wall right next to the murder weapon. The murderer had also covered all of the windows and the glass of the entry doors with pieces of clothing from the Moore's dressers. Now, many, including myself, theorize that this has to do with the murderer's conscience, if you can believe that they would have one. Basically them not wanting to see their own reflection as they're committing these horrible acts, or even as a form of remorse for the actions that they were doing. This also seems plausible because the murderer also covered all of the victims' bodies with their bed sheets going over their head, so that way it's as if they couldn't see the horrific thing they had done. Now, even stranger, and honestly more sick and twisted if you ask me, is that there was evidence of a plate of half-eaten food and a bowl of bloody water left on the dining table downstairs. My thing is, how do you commit such a horrific act to so many people, including children, and then proceed to sit and eat a meal? And honestly, I feel like that kind of just adds to the overall eeriness to this entire case. Like, obviously it was a sick and twisted murder, but it just keeps getting more and more sick and twisted. Now, some reports also say that there were cigarettes left, like cigarette butts left in the attic, which indicated that the killer had waited in the attic for the family to come home and then fall asleep before they went room to room. But I'm not 100% sure how accurate this is, because also from reports it said that the killer started from downstairs in the parents' room and then made their way upstairs to the kids' room. So if they were in the attic, they would have had to go all the way back downstairs and then go back up. Also from the TFIL channel, when they did a tour of the Villisca house, the tour guide mentioned that when the killer murdered the two parents, there was a puddle of blood left at the foot of the bed, as if the murderer had killed the parents and was walking out and stopped as if they heard something, and there was just a puddle of blood that had dripped from the axe. And because this is an unsolved case, obviously no one knows for sure exactly how everything happened, but these are all of the different reports based off of some of the evidence that was found. Now, like I said, all of the victims were found in their bed with their heads covered by bed sheets, and all of their skulls had been battered by the blunt end of an axe between 20 to 30 times total. Now, the ceilings in the parents' room and in the children's rooms upstairs all showed evidence of the sharp end of the axe having hit the ceiling, which further indicated that the blunt side of an axe was used, because the backswing basically hit the ceiling in between each blow. Now, like I said, this case is technically unsolved, but there are quite a few suspects for this case, but none of them have actually been convicted of the murder. And from what I can tell, it seems as though there was not enough evidence to convict any of these men of actually committing these crimes, but they all had at least motive, but one man actually confessed to the murders. You see, suspect Reverend Lynn George Jacqueline Kelly, that is a name, left Villisca via train the morning following the murders, and he told fellow passengers on board that 8 people were butchered in their beds as they slept, and this was before the bodies were even found. So he was later indicted for the murder of Lena Stillinger, and on August 31st, 1917, he signed a confession to the murder. However, during the trial, he actually recanted his confession, and he was later never able to be convicted for the crime. Since then, no one else has ever been charged in connection with the murders, and no other suspects have ever been identified. Today, the house has the reputation as one of the most haunted houses in the US, and is still a source of much speculation as to who might have committed such a terrible crime. Now, back in 2014, a man was actually hospitalized while in the middle of a paranormal investigation of the Villisca murder house. By the way, this look, I feel like, is going to be the definition of trust the process, because I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little worried. I was not expecting to take it here, but okay, sorry y'all. This look quickly became one of those where my entire living being had to be involved in order for it not to look too much of a hot mess. So sorry you completely didn't get to see the transformation of the eye look, but yeah, I'm still really not that happy with it, but moving on. Robert Larson Jr. was part of a family group of paranormal investigators who were staying overnight at the Villisca house. And it was reported that he was left alone in a room of the house when the other paranormal investigators all of a sudden heard him yelling from the other room. When they arrived, they found him with a stab wound to the chest laying on the floor. So obviously they called 911. And the investigation showed that there was no indication that the stab wound was caused by an accident or a fall. Now, I don't know if it's just because news outlets didn't want to make a connection or if the man never gave a statement claiming what happened, but I'm assuming based off of other stories that I've heard off of other YouTube channels that it's reported that he believes that it was a ghost that forced him to stab himself. And like I said, in the TFIL video that they did where the man is taking them on a tour of the house, the tour guide does mention a man stabbing himself in the chest, so I'm assuming he's referring to this case. And the tour guide said that the ghost allegedly, like, it felt as if the ghost literally turned his hand and forced him to stab himself in the chest. Now, when I read this actually reminded me of, like I've mentioned before, I'm a big fan of Ghost Adventures on Travel Channel, and one of the cases that they did was on the Villisca Axe murder house, and it was from a very long time ago. I was like, huh, that's funny. I feel like they mentioned something like this before. Well, they did. Now, in the Ghost Adventures episode, they interviewed 2 women who used to live in the home when they were kids along with their parents. They were sisters Linda Cloud and Patty Williamson. Now, the 2 women talked mainly about experiencing what sounded like young girls' voices talking throughout the night while they were sleeping. What I specifically remembered was they talked about their father had an extremely traumatic experience in the house. Now, they say that as he was busy sharpening a knife, their father felt what was an unseen force turn the knife around and also force himself to stab himself in the abdomen. Very similar to the other experience of the paranormal investigator. Now, honestly, the fact that these 2 separate cases are so similar really makes me think that there may be some legitimacy to this. Think what you may. Let me know what you think about it specifically. But the fact that 2 very separate accounts from 2 very different time frames happened really does make me wonder, like, if there is some form of poltergeist activity that's so violent and strong enough to actually force 2 separate men to stab themselves. Like, that's pretty wild. Now, honestly, from my research, I couldn't really find too many, like, articles talking about people who caught ghosts on camera or things like that, but a quick YouTube search, you can find plenty of channels that have taken tours and allegedly came across EVPs during their recordings and had really interesting experiences. Now, to be honest, I feel like TFIL's video seems to be the most comprehensive in talking about some people's experiences, as well as having a really good in-depth tour on the Villisca Axe murder house. So that's the one that I'm specifically going to leave linked in the description box. And also, in their video, their tour guide actually also goes into one really creepy experience that he personally experienced, where he thought he was going to be scaring a friend he heard running up the stairs, but when he was about to scare the person, there was nobody there.
This is the side of where I had the creepiest thing I've ever had happen.
Oh boy.
And that was a Friday night. I came in, I locked the kitchen door so nobody'd just walk in. And I'm trying to figure out how to fix that deal.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just playing with it.
Oh no, and I'm just kind of messing around with it. Somebody walks in the house.
Huh?
And I'm just like, come on, people, we're closed. Obviously. And I'm like, well, obviously, idiot, they broke in because it's dark. So I hide in the closet. The plan was scare this kid and just be like, why are you breaking in? Like, if you want to see it, I'll just show it to you.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm in there, they're walking around downstairs forever. They finally come up here into the room. I kick that door open to the big, ah! Nothing.
No
Nothing.
way.
And I was frozen. I couldn't even talk. I was just standing there. I'm like nothing would come out of my mouth. I go downstairs. I could see the door still locked. I watch a surveillance video. Nothing.
What? And you heard, like, footsteps
Yeah,
up the stairs.
Walking around, and up the steps is like heel toe. Boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom. And when I kicked that thing open, it was just like a freezer. And I could not say a word.
Now, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that are going to be like, oh my god, TFIL is so fake, like, they make up all their stuff, like, they're not real paranormal investigators, blah, blah, blah. Think what you will. I watch their videos. I like to think that they don't want to sacrifice their personalities and their like comedy that they add to their investigations, but from watching quite a few of their videos, it does seem like they want to catch as much actual evidence of ghost investigations as possible, and then of course they're going to add funny moments and dramatic moments to make it more entertaining. But I think at least a majority of the evidence that they tried to gather seems legitimate, and they've even worked with people like Patty, who is a medium, I believe is the proper term for what she calls it, medium or psychic, one of the two. And she's even worked with like Ghost Adventures in the past too, and they've worked with her multiple times. So I don't know, maybe I'm just naive and I want to believe that they're really trying to find actual evidence. But with my final lash on, that, my friends, is the Villisca Axe murder house. Let me know what you guys thought of this story down below. Once again, this is a very tragic, horrific murder, and I cannot begin to imagine what happened. Like, it's so insane that I feel like it's so hard to wrap your head around the fact that this is something that legitimately did happen. And I can only imagine the horror that the neighborhood and the whole community felt when all of this took place. So please stay respectful in the comments below, and remember that this is an actual murder case that did happen. This is more than just a haunted house. This is, you know, the site of something really terrible and really sad. Also, let me know what you guys thought of some of the paranormal stories. On a lighter note, I think I was able to pull my makeup through at the end. It's definitely not my favorite look. However, it's definitely not bad like that black and silver look. I think I was able to pull it together pretty well. It's definitely big. I was not expecting to do something this big, but hey, I think it worked out. The lashes definitely helped pull it through, these big lashes, and this highlight is definitely giving for the look. But, and then look at this one. Ooh. Ooh. Much better, right? I told you it would come through in the end. Per usual, let me know down below what you guys have thought of this video, and if you liked it, make sure that you like it, and if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on any future spooky snack uploads or anything else that I got sprinkled in throughout. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.